Oh, what are you doing, man? You don't know this stuff. You're such a fraud. Yeah, you're way out of your depth. You're just lucked out and others don't know how incompetent you really are. Yeah, that dude over there, he knows way more than you. And you get paid more than him. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Ah, yes. Good old imposter syndrome, our friend. The experience of feeling like you aren't as competent as others believe you to be, making you doubt your abilities and make you feel like a fraud. 70 to 75% of the population in all industries are affected by it, especially software engineers. And I'll share a story from my personal software engineer experience with you a little bit later in this video too. Software development, no matter the specific area, is wide and ever-changing. And because of this, you always have to be learning new things, and it's impossible to know everything in your field, no matter the number of years or experience you have. I recently talked about this in my video on why software engineering is hard. You can find the link somewhere up here. This makes developers susceptible to imposter syndrome, as it's not really possible to master anything, and there's no clear-cut way to measure skill. All programmers have some level of imposter syndrome, but in my experience, it's usually prevalent in moments of transition. For example, when you start looking for a job, after learning to code, if you're a beginner, and when you start a new job, even if you have experience, or even if you're changing teams within an existing work environment too. When not managed well, imposter syndrome can really prevent you from progressing forward. It might prevent you from applying to jobs or seeking promotions because you feel unqualified. You don't want to ask for help from others since you're afraid of exposing yourself, that you're really a fraud. It might prevent you from taking on projects because you don't feel ready enough. Well, here's a bit of a wake-up call for you. You're never ready enough. When you take your time and you feel like you're ready enough, the programming world has moved on and you'll be stuck slinging COBOL code. Why does this guy always pick on COBOL? I don't know. Hey, good news folks. You can learn to manage your imposter syndrome and have it not be so debilitating to your progress. Before taking a look at some of the ways you can navigate around your imposter syndrome, let's see some of the benefits. Did he just say benefits? Yep, the benefits of imposter syndrome. Okay, hang on with me here and let me explain. A little self-doubt is good for you. Having imposter syndrome, or that feeling, keeps your ego in check and prevents you from getting too overconfident in your abilities. Is confidence good? Yes, but overconfidence leads to someone who is ignorant of their needs to improve their skills. Someone who is unwilling to look at their blind spots and unwilling to listen to others' opinions. And to top it all off, combined with arrogance, it doesn't win you any social points with people. Overconfidence makes you a bit complacent in your abilities, so a bit of imposter syndrome can give you the motivation you need to keep learning. Now, it's been observed that people with limited knowledge or competence in a subject overestimate their own knowledge or competence in that subject. In psychology, this is due to a cognitive bias known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. You might have heard of that. And essentially it's this: the less you know about something, the more you think you know about the thing. So then, is it possible that since you think you don't know much about your area, could that be an indicator that you understand way more about the field than you think you did? Feeling like you don't belong in a position or that you lack the skills for a job can really push you to put the time in to get better at them. It might motivate you to prioritize learning, and it could give you that push to give up less important tasks so that you can utilize your time better. Netflix, I'm looking at you. You should be careful with this though. If you go too extreme, it could lead to burnout. And this happened to me also. So let me know in the comments below if you want to hear that story. Maybe in another video. Notice what you feel most insecure about when your imposter syndrome crops up. Have a little bit of introspection. It could be pointing out a real weakness that you need to strengthen. Imposter syndrome can help you identify an area that you really need to work on. So don't just get rid of that feeling. Embrace it. Feeling like an imposter is a positive sign because it means you're being challenged. If you look back on your life, you might find that the time you grew the most or improved the most was when you stepped out of your comfort zone and were just a bit out of your depth. Software engineering or other areas of life like swimming. Pun intended. Embrace challenging situations as they make you level up faster. Now, I don't think you can ever completely get rid of imposter syndrome. If anyone has the secret sauce to completely eliminating it, please share down below in the comments. I think some form of it will always be with you, even if it reduces, given the situation you're currently in. It always has a way of cropping up whenever you start or change jobs, change teams or projects, or start a new course. Now what you can do is learn to navigate around it so that it doesn't debilitate and prevent you from moving forward and pursuing new opportunities. Here are some things you can try. Instead of trying to push away the feelings of being an imposter when they come up, acknowledge them, accept them, and I'd even say go as far as embrace them. You give much more power to your negative feelings when you try to ignore them and push them away, but I'm not a psychologist. That's just from personal experience. Notice your negative thoughts. Question their validity. If you just start to notice your inner dialogue with yourself, then you can start holding the negative thoughts to account, and you can start to see how some of them are false. Ignoring them and pushing them away or deeper only gives them more oxygen to grow and burn inside of you. Ouch. At the most basic level, your brain's job is to protect you from danger. It's the fight or flight response, right? And because of this, not all the information your brain tells us is helpful or even accurate. And not all the messages we tell ourselves are accurate or complete or even helpful. When you notice that strong feeling come up, when you consider doing something new, you should examine it and try to rationally consider its validity. All right, let's for example say you have a fear of speaking up and contributing your opinion because people will laugh at you or make fun of you. Now just acknowledge that the likelihood of that happening is very low. Yes, in a professional situation, you might come across that egotistical, aggressive, and rude person, but that is usually an exception. And if you have one of those people that you work with, sometimes it helps to think they're really just trying to do what's best for the company. They might not be the most socially adept people. So if you think of it that way, you can kind of compartmentalize that aggressive, rude person and try to not let that hold you back from expressing your opinions. But the reality is, for most of the time, even if people don't agree with your opinion, they often will never aggressively shut it down by disparaging the person. And you'll be able to see that what you fear actually has little chance of happening. By its very nature, imposter syndrome pushes us to save face, so we tend to doubt ourselves privately, thinking that we are alone in this and other people have it together. Talk to your peers and mentors about it. It helps you to find out just how common imposter syndrome is. The more people you talk about the subject, the more it loses power over individuals. If you know that your advisor or mentor or peer also has those feelings, it'll give you more confidence in your ability to push through despite all the doubts you may have. We tend to overestimate how much other people notice about us, a phenomenon known as the spotlight effect. Look at that guy. Yeah, look at him. We tend to think that our mistakes and flaws clearly stand out to people and that they're always judging us. But for the most part, everyone is in their own personal bubble thinking about themselves and their issues. There is a misconception in tech, especially among junior developers who don't have much experience working on projects, that you have to have deep knowledge of the technology or programming language to be able to work with it. No. Important skills that a developer should have are the ability to learn and the ability to solve. You should be able to look at a problem and then know how to get from point A to point Z. You don't have to have all the knowledge to go from A to Z, but you can figure it out. And you have to be able to know how to get help when you run into issues so you can figure it out. In a typical project, you'll read a lot of documentation, search online for encountered bugs, Stack Overflow, right? And then you'll write and refactor code many times over, so you don't have to know everything right off the bat. You just have to be able to think through a problem and identify what you need. We often tend to look at where we are and get discouraged by the gap between where we are and where we want to be. But if you could just step back and look how far you've come, you'll appreciate the progress you've made and you'll have more confidence in your ability to learn. Even if you're convinced that you aren't good enough right now, the fact that you've come this far is proof that you can improve, right? You didn't know this stuff. You weren't born with this knowledge. You learned it. You can learn more. We also tend to give gravity to our weaknesses and the things we aren't good at. It might help to look at the things that you are good at to give a better picture of your abilities. If you only look at the skills you lack or aren't good at, you tend to see yourself as being more incompetent. But if you can also look at your strengths, you'll most likely see that you actually are pretty capable. Good for you. Instead of worrying about your skill level or lack of skills that you have or how everyone is better than you, you should focus on your progress. As long as you're learning and progressing, you will eventually get where you want to be. Listen, even if you are a fraud and you aren't qualified and you were hired by mistake and others are better than you, all you can do is start from where you are. So focus on your progress because that's something you can control. And if you do find yourself in that situation, maybe you should consider yourself lucky. You get this opportunity to learn a ton. Drinking from a fire hose, I believe it's called sometimes. So I'm reading this book right now called Think Again by Adam Grant. Actually, it's the audiobook. I like audiobooks where the author narrates themselves, and I like Adam Grant, the way he speaks. According to this book, there's new evidence that these folks with imposter syndrome actually get higher peer review scores than their more confident counterparts. That's pretty cool. It also talks about the benefits. Some of them I mentioned earlier, but let's just quickly review because I'm talking about the book, and if you are curious, it's a pretty cool book. It's not about imposter syndrome, but it mentions it. Some of the benefits are it motivates us to work harder. Imposter syndrome is not helpful when we want to start a race, but once we are running, it keeps us motivated so we can actually finish. Now, what's interesting is that this also depends on gender. In the Wikipedia article I'll link down below in the description also describes the gender differences. Basically, imposter syndrome has similar effects on male and female, but what's interesting is it's more likely to spur teamwork among men. In other words, men collaborated more when they felt like imposters, according to studies, whereas women were more likely to feel debilitated by doubts and were more driven by confidence. The second benefit is imposter thoughts can motivate us to work smarter. If we don't know we will win, we can rethink our strategy, which can lead to a better result. Remember that Dunning-Kruger effect I mentioned? Feeling like an imposter puts us in the total beginner mindset and leads us to question assumptions. And the third benefit is it can make us better learners. Having doubts about ourselves removes us from that pedestal and encourages us to seek advice from others. So, have we been misjudging imposter syndrome? Those that are aware they have it may think of it as a disorder. I mean, come on, the word syndrome is in the name. I just think it's a natural part of learning in the fast-changing modern world. That's how I like to look at it. Confidence can make us complacent. If we never worry about letting others down, we might be more likely to do just that. A few years ago, more like 10, I took on a project that I had zero knowledge about. And this was when I was starting my own business and getting on my own. I was already a web developer, but I had no clue about analytics and business intelligence and the technologies involved in that world. I took on a project because it was tangential to what I was doing at the time, which was SharePoint development, and the client needed to expose some business intelligence inside SharePoint. The SharePoint part, I could handle that. It was the business intelligence part that I was clueless about. But I knew I could learn it. I knew I could pick it up. So I went into the meetings and I sat with the clients as they explained what they needed. And during that time, the pressure on me was so high to learn all that stuff that literally every single night, all I would do is learn and practice and build proof of concept applications, all related to business intelligence and how I can provide this service to my client that I promised I could do. So this was a case of fake it till you make it. Anyway, thanks for listening to my rant here. If you like this kind of video, let me know down in the comments below. I've been doing software development for many years and I have lots of stories to share. So if you want to hear them, let me know. And as always, have a good day.